done there. Those networks really do pay off, and I think it's pretty critical to getting a job in any field. I think having that understanding that it's okay to get help, and that mostly everyone in this industry has had help along the way. Something to really kind of, I want to make sure that it's okay to get help here.
Wes, I'm really glad you pointed that out. Sometimes as Latinos or Latinas, I'll speak to myself, there's a hesitation or reservation to ask for help, right? So for me, I think one of my learnings through my career has been it's all about the network. It's all about not just having these superficial relationships, but really building relationships with mentors and knowing that we're asking for help, but also that we're offering something to the mentors too, right? We might be younger or we might be in a different field, but that cross knowledge is helpful for the mentors as well. So I think it's really important for us as a community to learn about having the humility, right? To not just be shy and but to really speak up and to be humble, to know that we all need help. I mean, that's how a lot of these people are getting in there, and it's not above us. I wanted to ask you a little bit about now in your current role as a tech recruiter at Adobe. What are the types of things that you look for on a resume, specifically from like a technical perspective?
Yeah, so I think kind of the things that I like to speak to in regards to like applying to jobs and sending in resumes is I think the first thing is to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying to, right? Being able to, look, I'll be honest with you, like there's a lot of recruiters out there that are they're pretty lazy, right? Like they'll be like, okay, this is longer than a page resume, I'm gonna throw it out the window, right? So understanding from a recruiting standpoint what they're looking for, right? They want to be able to connect the dots as easily as possible. They're getting hundreds of resumes coming through. So if you're looking for a job and you can identify the minimum qualifications on a job posting, that is the best start, right? If you have a resume that speaks to at least the minimum qualifications, that's a good thing, a good head start to kind of look at, right? I have friends that recruit at Facebook, and they won't even look at candidates if they don't meet those minimum requirements, right? So even though you have 7 years of experience, if whatever's listed in that minimum requirement isn't there, you're trying to get a job at Facebook, they don't care. They want you. They just want to hit that. Like, it's an easy thing for them to take to a manager and be like, hey, he has the bare minimum. Let's just talk to him. And you can be overqualified for that role, at the end of the day. But there are very specific things that people look at. So I would say, like, yeah, tailor your resume. Statistics help as well. If you're able to put down the metrics that you've really succeeded at in your current roles, I think that's helpful. From an engineering standpoint, right, it's a little bit more black and white. They're looking for, skills. You can't really kind of like fake it through a coding test. So you just have, I think curiosity really shines from an engineering standpoint, right? Like, does this person not only continue to work on the things that are handed to them, but do they have, the ability to look outside of that to continue to learn? I think engineering, more than a lot of different industries, is a continuous learning industry. I think the technology is always growing in that sense and in that space. So there's always something new to learn. But I would say, yeah, tailor your resume. Tailor your resume to the roles. I would say research the companies that you're interested in, the types of roles that exist there, the different titles that exist there, how they're structured. A lot of that, comes from, a lot of these informations can come from different areas. Like, you go to an event and someone's there and they talk about, their anecdote, their experience, and they, were a coordinator that moved into a scout role, and then they moved into a talent partner, right? Like, that's an example of a progression that you can see. So how do you identify, if you're trying to switch into a role, what are the minimum qualifications that I need for that role? How can I tailor my resume that, my experience will speak to those qualifications?
I also really love that you mentioned that you're a coach too. How has coaching been helpful in job searching? I think sometimes we underestimate some of our outside activities and what we do. And I just want to see, from like a recruitment perspective, how do you weigh that, and how has it been helpful for you personally?
Yeah, I used to speak about this like quite a lot when I was at Netflix, because they had culture that was, they used to liken it to like a dream team, right? And you know, for me, you know, how that applies into real life, like I'd be like, okay, well, if I had just a bunch of top performers, you know, and that's all that I curated, you know, are they going to be a cohesive team, and does this really apply to like what I'm doing? So I use a lot of my coaching experience, more so to understand, you know, human relationships and how those apply, like team dynamic, and really understanding that, like, you know, the most successful teams that I've coached and the ones that I've been on, are the ones where, you know, people can, you know, they understand their strengths and weaknesses, they know their gaps, and we build a team around that, and we build an environment that helps that grow. So it's not just, you know, here are the metrics, hit them, and if you know, we'll stack rank you. Like, no one wants to be on a team that's like that, right? Like, no one wants to be put on that. Like, everyone in team sports, they have their strengths and weaknesses, and you have a coach that can, you know, take you guys as individuals and allow you guys to, thrive as a whole. Like, I took a lot of that experience as a coach and applied that to recruiting. I'm like, all right, well, I push back on hiring managers, and it's like, all right, well, look, like everyone that you've hired is a Stanford graduate. You know, like, is this really the best representation of like what we can get out of people? Like, you know, they all have the same experience, right? Like, do you really want that? Like, you know, like, you know, at the same time, like, yeah, probably not. And are we doing our jobs, you know, to even look at that talent? And then as a company, it's a company's job to nurture that talent, right? So I think early on when we were, when diversity was a huge push for a lot of these companies, they just thought like, let's just bring in brown faces and see how that goes. But they never created an environment where, you know, the leadership, you know, were people that looked like them, where they set them up for success and gave them resources and be like, okay, you're the only Latino on your team. You don't want to be that one person and not know anyone else in the company that has a similar experience as you, right? So I think as now, like, companies are a little more thoughtful around that, but it's just, you know, kind of gotta roll with it at certain points. So.
Luis has a really good question. Wes, do you recommend putting that experience on your resume?
Like my coaching experience, or just like outside stuff. Yeah, I do. Like, I put my stuff out there. One of the reasons that they liked my, you know, that my experience stood out at Netflix with the hiring manager was that I had, you know, that experience, right? They were really big on, you know, like a team environment, and you know, it definitely applied. And I think good recruiters will be able to connect the dots. You know, if you're able to connect the dots on your resume, you know, good recruiters will take the time to look at that and see, like, okay, this guy, you know, like most of the people that, I mean, a lot of engineering managers would benefit, and most managers in general in these tech environments, whether they're recruiting managers or HR managers, could benefit greatly from coaching a bunch of 8-year-olds. Like, I just, you know, like, it's a skill, or just, you know, being a figure in the family that can help do that. And I think for the most part, people, you know, the right people will look at that and value that. So, yeah, don't be afraid to put that on your resume.
That's awesome. I'll pause there, and just open it up for Q&A for you guys to ask Wes some questions directly.
I had some questions in here as well that I think I got sent to me. I don't know if it'll be helpful for everyone, but I think one, we addressed switching sectors, right? You know, if you don't have the, you know, technical skills, I think it's kind of one of those things, like, understand the industries that you're going into, and then understand like common aspects of those industries and how they apply. Like, what are those transferable skills, right? If I'm a recruiter trying to go into a software development role with zero experience, right, the hurdle for me to get into that is, you know, like, essentially I'm banking on someone teaching me how to do that job, right? But like, if you were to take like a coach, and you say like, okay, like, here's a sales position that we'd like to consider you for. A lot of it is just comes down to, you know, it's a numbers game. Can you stay organized? Can you, you know, hit the numbers that they're looking for? You know, can you be okay with being rejected, right? As a salesperson, right, you're probably gonna have to be email, and as a recruiter, I get rejected all the time. Like, I don't want a job from you. Like, I got a bunch of people in my DMs trying to give me a job at, you know, various different companies. So, like, being okay with those types of things. I think that's, you know, don't be afraid to understand, take a look internally, understand your skill set, understand past work that you've done and the skills that you've gained from those positions and how they apply to different industries. Again, I'm someone who went from event planning to marketing to technical support into recruiting. So, I think it's, if you're looking at it on paper, you're like, oh, no, this makes sense. So, and we've seen a lot of that in plenty of different anecdotes as well.
I have a question about cover letters. Would you recommend that we have one for every application we send, and like, what are you looking for in those?
Yeah, that's it's a good question. It kind of comes back onto the point of like most recruiters are kind of lazy. So I think like having a little, if you're switching, say, careers, like having a byline at the top of your resume where you're just like, hey, I'm, look, I have experience in XYZ. I'm looking to move into this to apply, this experience. Like that will be more helpful than a cover letter. I mean, to be honest, you're looking at volume. Some companies will require you to write a cover letter, right? I think Stripe is a company that stands out that I know does that. If anyone knows Stripe, they're an online payments processor. They handle processing payments for, it's not really that exciting, but they handle processing and payments for like, thousands of different sites and whatnot. But they use that like cover letter. They have you write it in there, and because they use it to see, how you speak, they kind of use it as like a culture marker. So if they are asking for one, definitely put one in there. But for the most part, a lot of what we're seeing on my end is just a lot of volume. Like I want to make sure that, I can see the experience first and what we're looking for, and if that matches, and then I'll do the work to get on the phone and really kind of dig in from there. But short answer is, do the ones that really require it. A lot of them are super high volume, and they won't necessarily be something that, may even be viewed. So.
Thank you.
I have some other ones in here. This is like program manager at a nonprofit. Was that anyone's question? Maybe Jasmine, I don't know if that's. Did you apply to some roles at Adobe?
I did actually, yes. So I guess I'm just curious more about like the trajectory, because I hear you said that you went from like event management or event coordination to marketing to like recruiting, and so I'm curious how that.
Yeah.
More about that.
Yeah. So I mean, anecdotally, I can say that I applied to Adobe before this job happened. I applied to Adobe probably 20, 30 times before this, right? Like anytime I saw a scout position, I'd be like, yeah, it seems like a good company. They're San Jose company that were in there. I think a lot of understanding like when and what to apply, what that trajectory looks like is like understanding, does your title and the roles that you have in that title match, that position, right? So like even with like the recruiting experience that I have, like if I applied maybe to one of these as like a program specialist, I've never ran like kind of recruiting programs. And for the most part, they're going to look for someone that has run those types of programs with very specific needs, whether they're like actually working with like the universities for another tech company on behalf of like an internship program, right? So a lot of it is like, okay, if the end goal is to become XYZ, what if there's an entry level point or an entry point that I can get into, like, will that work, right? What can I do that? So like talent scout, right? I think the most common thing to go from like a talent scout or a sourcer into like a technical recruiter, you're going to start out normally as like a talent coordinator in most positions, right? You're going to get a position where you're maybe scheduling, you're sending out offer letters, like there's a little more on the admin side. But from there, you may find a different road. You may move into programs from there because you've done kind of the not low level work, but kind of the work that is more administrative, and you need to be organized. It's fast paced. It's kind of building all these different skills that could easily apply in a different setting if someone gave you that opportunity to learn. So yeah, in that sense of like, do I need to do XYZ? Like Jasmine, like hit me up after this. We'll be able to talk through the programs here. Just my experience with them, and kind of what they look for, what those industries even look like, and the type of work that they do, because it's not really upfront for a lot of these things, right? Like, they're not going to indulge in like a lot of, the information. They're not going to send that out to everyone like, oh, this is the type of program that we're doing. So, yeah.
Thanks, Wes. That's super helpful.
Thank you.
Thanks. Jesus had a question too. So let's say Jasmine gets the job, or she gets to the next round. What does that interview process look like?
Yeah. So interviewing, to be honest, is daunting for anyone. Like I'm still not a good interviewer, you know. But once I think you get your foot in the door, it's important to prepare. I know it sounds silly, but prepare by understanding the area of the business that you may be entering, the type of work that they're doing. Okay, like you can't coach curiosity, right? You can't teach that. You can't do that, right? So if you are actively curious about the type of work that you're doing, kind of problems that they'll be facing, like those are all things that are helpful in that interview process, and kind of the things that you'll be speaking to, and the kind of things that the topics that they kind of bring up in the interviews they want to be led to, right? I think one, being able to speak concisely about the work that you've done and the impact that you've had is always going to be important, right? I think impact is one of those things where for example, it's like I could say this quarter I was attributed to 20 hires here at Adobe, right? It's something that I can kind of speak to. They're like, okay, like what's the impact that you had in a certain role? So, I think a part of it is being able to understand your experience, how to speak to that and how it applies to different roles. And then, in addition to that, just, do the research on the team, on the culture, the company, right? A lot of these companies will vet for, a culture fit that we like to call, which it's like my nightmare, because I think for the most part, you treat people well and you're open and you allow them to grow in their space. Like you can build a good culture, but a lot of them will have, bullet points or bold, they'll have a manifesto of their culture and whatnot. So you do a little bit of research around the company, things that they're involved in, the role, the specifics of the role, and kind of your experience and how that all kind of ties in. I think that would be what to prepare for in an interview process. So do the research on the companies. It'll help you out tremendously. YouTube is a great resource. I think for me, I pulled up every time I go on an interview, I'll just look on YouTube on like talks, like if they talked about like Netflix is a good example where their culture is pretty infamous. And there's a lot of talks about what they look for from a culture fit perspective, right? The types of things, like the different organizations, right? What does recruiting at Adobe look like? There's plenty of different talks out there on these different organizations. So do a little bit of research on that outside of it. YouTube is helpful for me. Podcasts were helpful for me in terms of like understanding how they speak and how they like to kind of, talk about their work. People are really happy to talk about the things that they do in tech, and they're not afraid to, scream it from the ceiling. So, if you can kind of put yourself in that mindset of like how they kind of think about their positions and their roles and things that they're pretty upfront about what the things that they look for. There's a lot of research that can be applied there in that sense.
Great insights. Albert has a great question. In terms for applying for a software engineer or developer role, do you look more at a candidate that has a bachelor's degree in software engineer or computer science, or is being self-taught valid from a recruitment lens?
Yeah, so I think professional experience will always kind of outweigh like a personal project, right? I think personal projects are helpful, and I tell people that I speak to every day, like if you have personal projects and you're fresh out of college, like what does that look like? If you have experience like doing pro bono work or whatever it is, like all that work will be applicable. But I think at the end of the day, like professional work will outweigh it for the most part. And then really software engineering, a lot of what we see is understanding what the companies and their leveling system is like, right? So for example, at Adobe, if you see like software engineer like 1 or 2, like those are pretty like either fresh out of a master's program or fresh out of a bachelor's program with maybe 0 experience to maybe a few years experience, right? It's understanding the technologies that you're working with, and are they modern technologies, or am I working with outdated technologies? I think Microsoft is a good example where they have a very specific technical stack that they work in, right? I think a lot of what we're seeing is with engineers specifically, it's like, okay, are you, in this working in this specific technology? Are you, what scale are you working at? What's the impact? What have you learned on top of that? Because it's easy to kind of just sit there and get your ticket and do your tasks in an engineering role, but still being able to continue to learn is important. And then, yeah, in regards to like, if it's a software engineering or computer science role, it's not going to matter as much to most recruiters. I think they want to understand, again, like the things that you've worked on, the technologies that you worked on, the things that you've used, and what it looked like when you were working on those technologies, right? If you say, oh yeah, I code in Java, and you kind of only work in this specific language maybe 5% of the time, and the job requires you to work on this 95% of the time, those things will come out in the interview process. So just be real about, where your skill set is, like really self-evaluate, really challenge yourself as an engineer to continue to want to work at a bigger scale or work on more complex problems. Like those are all the things that at the end of the day will matter. And it is more of a true meritocracy in that sense where like, yeah, they're going to get you on like a coding challenge and you're going to need to know, certain things, certain aspects about the role, whether it's design, algorithms, coding, stuff like that. So yeah, professional experience is always going to be, more helpful than just like side projects, but don't not put side projects on there. Speak to the things that you're doing, in those side projects because it shows that your ability to learn. Sometimes it also just comes down to the team. I've hired teams that want people that are language agnostic, that are learn anything that they want. Some people just want someone that has like 10 years in one language and that's their specialty. So, for you as engineers, it's important to understand the teams that you're going to be joining, like really in any setting across, this process, treat this as very much a two-way street when you're in the interview process, right? Like, it's important for you to understand the company just as much as it is for them to understand you. Right. So know the teams that they're working on, know the projects that they're working on, know the challenges that they're facing, and see if you can connect the dots in terms of your experience. And then degree in that way won't really matter. We have plenty of self-taught individuals. I think for the most part, my friends that have done, they were not engineering majors and they learned the code and they applied their math knowledge and whatnot. So it just comes out.
That's a great segue, Wes. Thank you for that. And to Luis's follow-up question, what are red flags we should look out for when looking for jobs, and what red flags do recruiters look for?
Yeah, so I think an easy one for recruiters to like say, oh, this is a red flag is job movement. Like if you're a person that's in a job for 6 months at a time and we're always bouncing around, I think that's the kind of the biggest red flag that some recruiters look for. In this environment, I've been a little more flexible around that because at this point, like my stance is like, well, what are these companies, is it the person or is it the company that's really kind of, kind of pushing that out? And I don't really value just kind of being in a terrible environment more than identifying like, no, I think this is unhealthy and I want to move on. And if you're able to speak to that, so you've, been in different companies, like Twitter is a perfect example for me. I was there for like 5 months, 6 months or so, and did really well. And then there's no growth opportunities, and they were very upfront about that. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna look outside this. And my manager was like, you probably should. So it's all comes down to like the story. But I think like an easy one that people get nicked for is like job hopping. Mm-hmm. In terms of like what should look out for when looking for jobs, I think if they're not willing to kind of discuss a lot of the role with you, and it doesn't feel like you're actually having a conversation with them, I think that can always be a red flag. But you never know, to be honest. I think I've worked on, or I've seen a job description where a team that a friend of mine was hiring for at one of these companies. I won't name the company, but they were looking for specifically people to move into a talent coordinating role, which is an entry-level recruiting role. They wanted someone that was straight male who was either Black or Hispanic Latinx. That was the requirements. And they didn't, and one of the requirements was that they didn't want that individual to go into recruiting, right? So I don't know, man. You could be hired. Like it's kind of one of those things where you'll kind of know, like maybe it could be great, like maybe it's awesome. But I think do research on Glassdoor or this company like Blind. There's a lot of resources that people are out there speaking to the culture at these companies and what they've experienced, and some of them may be anecdotal, but at the end of the day, you won't know there until you're there. I think that's something I've learned in my career pretty quickly. Like Twitter, it's a great company. I worked with amazing people, but because they didn't really foster an environment of growth, it was time for me to be like, okay, I did good work here. I made really good connections. I made a positive impact, and that's all it needed to be. Maybe we'll come back again. That's an opportunity that's on the table, to this day. But for me, it's evaluating what I want out of my company that I work for, that I dedicate my time to and my energy to. So.
Thanks, Wes. One red flag that I've seen is when I hear we work hard, play hard in the interview.
Yeah.
What I've learned that translates to is we work 80 hours a week, and then people binge drink and want you to be there for it, and I'd rather not.
Yeah, and most people now, like, I think Adobe is a good example of this, where like I'm not one of those people that likes to take vacation, because I just never have been. Self-care is a thing that I'm working on. It's just like taking care of myself, not really diving into work. But my manager in my meeting, she's like, "Are you gonna take some time off for Christmas?" I was like, "Yeah, like maybe like a day." She's like, "Just take a week." Like, you'll know when you're in those environments where your health is important to the business. And they want to make sure that that's top of mind. And there's a lot of companies out there that are like that. There's a lot of companies that aren't like that. There's a lot of companies that do bad things. So kind of one of those things where if you're in one of those situations, it's a tough, it'll be a tough call always, but you got to make the decision and for yourself at the end of the day, and really stand by that decision and have that confidence to understand, the reasons, and be thoughtful around the things that you're doing and the movement that you're making.
Thanks, Wes. Last two questions from Jesus. Should salary be discussed during an interview, or should we wait until when and if we're hired?
Yeah, so salary is a pretty important question here. I would say, it's always helpful to do research around what that market is paying for those industries, for those roles, right? There's a ton of information out there, in regards to, what these roles are paying, what you'd be looking for from a compensation perspective. And I think if you've done some research and, are a little bit curious around that, it'll eventually come up. I would bring it up. I would bring it up only if like the recruiter brings it up, in that sense. Like, especially for those early conversations, right? You don't want to be, I think like some recruiters get turned off on like, they start asking about compensation as like the first question that they had. I think you can always kind of weigh it out, but I think it works out mostly as long as you're doing research on the back end of like what to expect, what those expectations are. You can be upfront around, your current salary, if that's helpful. I've never seen a negative reaction to someone, being upfront about the compensation package and what they're making. Mostly it's like, like people that, are interviewers or candidates that are like, bring it up as like the kind of shining star into why they want to move into a job. So I would just advise to like not make that be like, upfront the shining star and your the North Star for your job hunt. Even though it's important, right? Like, get paid. But there's tons of ways you can research, out there, and I think it's helpful. For coordinator roles in recruiting, I think I've seen an average of $35 an hour start, around $50 for sourcing, so stuff like that. There's a lot of information out there. So,
thanks. Glassdoor is so helpful now too, just in seeing like salary ranges and things like that. In terms of job location, may you ask or request for remote work? Yeah, that's a great question right now. What are the topics like? If so, when would it be appropriate time frame to do so?
Yeah, I think in regards to like remote work, most of the jobs will put that they're remote friendly, that they are open to remote. I think a good question to ask is always like, what's how have you guys supported your employees during this time? Like, are you looking to be, as things return to normal, are you looking to be in this like hybrid model, or or are you open to like remote? Like, what does that look like from a company perspective? And then it's just, from there, it's a question where you're presenting to be a little curious, like, they'll give you the answer. They'll let you know what the policy is. I think at Adobe, our policy right now is no one's in the office, unless you want to be, and it's purely voluntary. Most people are tied to an office, and it's more in this hybrid model as we go back. And so some people treat remote work differently and define it differently, right? Remote work at Adobe's essentially the expectation is that you never will be in an office, right? So there's no desk space for you. There's none of that. At Twitter, anyone can be remote. Like they can work wherever and do whatever they want. The salary ranges will differ between the different areas, and I think that's a pretty common thing. Not a lot of folks are getting Bay Area salary in, say, Salt Lake City, Utah. So there will be compensation bands around that. If you're applying for roles in Denver, they list the salary ranges that they have for those roles. So some things to keep in mind, in terms of like research and stuff like that. But I would just ask if what the policy is and how they're treating that, and what the goals are. Just if you go into like, is this a remote position? Could come off in a different way. So.
Question from E. Jimenez. What books help guide your vision, team dynamics?
Oh my God, I gotta admit, like, I'm not a huge reader. I think the last book I read was about jellyfish. So like recently. But I'm trying to think. I know like there's a lot of books around like just company cultures and dynamics. I think like Netflix has like specifically a book around like what their culture is and how they use that to grow them into the space that they're at. So really, I think it comes down to just like kind of like what's curious to you and how you can tie that into it. Like you find a book that like I can make a connection between like the jellyfish book that I read and say like a work situation if I wanted to, right? If you're always thinking in this mindset of things that are important to you, the things that you value, and how you want to like bring that into the workplace. And a lot of these books can be helpful, whether they're nonfiction or fiction. So find something that's interesting to you. If you get something out of it, and how you can apply that to, like a team dynamic or say your personal vision. I think that'll be important than everyone reading kind of the same book of, I don't know, what's the Facebook lady wrote a book that's really famous, Lean In.
Yeah.
Sheryl Sandberg.
Sheryl Sandberg, wrote like Lean. Like if everyone is reading that book, you're just gonna get hive mind, right? Like everyone's kind of in the same mindset. And I think like if you're able to, like companies do value like you and your your personalities. Like we want to hire all the same people that think the same way, that all read the same book. Like it wouldn't be that fun. So a lot of what's guided my vision and my team dynamics is just the experience that I've had coaching. The experience that I've had working at startups that were a little more chaotic, stuff like that. So
awesome. And then last question for Albert, and then I'll, if you're okay with it, Wes, I'll include your LinkedIn link at the bottom.
Yeah, I'll give everyone. Yeah, I'll send everyone my LinkedIn. I think I could pop it in this chat probably pretty quickly here. Yeah, hit me up. Reach out to me if anyone wants to just hop on a call. I should be able to carve out some time if you want me to look at a resume or anything. I want to be a resource for you and, be able to be here to answer questions. I think,
Thanks, Wes. I appreciate that. One last question. If this one's more about if you actually do get hired, what are the chances that the company is willing to help you pursue finishing your formal education if you didn't have one? So in terms of compensation or educational credits, such as tuition reimbursement, what do you think? Are companies doing that right now? I know sometimes it trends.
Yeah. So most companies will lay out like the benefits and the perks that they have like on their website. I would say self-research that. I know at Adobe there's a learning fund for like every employee, whether it's like pursuing. I think the range could be anywhere, right, from personal growth to professional growth. If you want to spend it on, part to pay for some of your MBA, right? I think, a lot of companies do have those opportunities where, it's baked into the perks that they, the benefits that they provide to their employees. So, a lot of companies will have like wellness benefits. They'll have, the free lunch that you see, and they'll have dry cleaning service. Like they'll list all of that. It's like the way that they can kind of, sell people. So it'll be out there. It's still, a thing. I think Adobe specifically does have like a learning fund that can be used towards a multitude of different things, whether it's, self-growth, professional growth, stuff like that.
Awesome. Thank you. And just for the final closing minutes of this, I just want to say first, Wes, thank you for your candor. Thanks for being so transparent and so helpful. I think this has been really helpful for all of us. And I just want to take the last couple minutes, even while Wes is here, because he can help me brainstorm too, is what other topics are top of mind for you guys? Alejandro and I are working to curate speakers like Wes in technology or in other fields to help build your networks. So what would be helpful for you guys, for us to find more speakers around? You can pop it into the chat, or you can just shout it out.
I was thinking, Jennifer, maybe we can send something out, like a little survey thing of getting some, maybe sometimes, if there's something you hear a lot, getting some thoughts, maybe it's something we can send something.
That would be great. That would be great. We have a couple speakers lined up for the beginning of next year. In January, we have a kickoff with Dino Barajas, who's a Bellarmine grad, he's a pretty big time prominent attorney in LA. He's from San Jose. His mom worked in the Canarias, and he's a local guy and has really made a very successful career and path for himself. He's really excited to speak with you guys. And he has 5,000 plus net contacts on LinkedIn. He's going to talk to us about just the power of networking and how helpful it's been really for his career. That's how he makes a lot of business for the law firm, just from his contacts. He'll be our speaker for January. In February, we have Maria Fernanda Trucho-Masuk, who has started iOS scholarships. She works with diverse scholarships and getting funding for education for undergrad and graduate, specifically for diverse students. And then March, we have Vincent Cuellar, who is a brand manager from Capital One, Latino out of Washington, D.C., and has just paved his way into corporate America, right? But we're hoping to open up these contacts and open up these networks for you all. And so if there's anyone that you want to speak with, or if you're interested in also going onto my LinkedIn, and anyone that you want to meet through me, just shoot, I'll put mine as well. Just shoot me a note, and I'm happy to help connect you guys and help you with your LinkedIn profiles, or anything that we can do to help you guys networking. Hold on, I forgot mine. Raul, any closing?
Yeah, no, I just really, again, Alejandro and Jennifer and Jesus, thank you all for kind of putting this together, and Wes, appreciate your honesty and just speaking to us all. Really, like, again, to the alumni, reach out to other alumni if you could. Let them know about this. It's something that we kind of, last year got something kind of going this. I know with Jasmine, we had been talking about this in like 3 years ago, getting something like, she was wanting to get something going like this, and life happens, right? And I think we've gotten in touch with other alumni, like Luis and other people, like, hey, we want to get this kind of speakers out here to come out here and support and give us resources for our Sacred Heart Nativity School, and something that Jennifer has been reaching out to is other nativity schools, that because we have other alumni from Sacred Heart Nativity that are outside of the state as well, and we're just trying to get as many resources out there to our community. So any ideas, anything like that comes up, please let us know. But again, I can't thank you enough, Jennifer,
yeah, I really love doing it. I mean, I think one of the eye-opening things for me, and I look back at my career so far, is it's been one or two contacts, right? A couple cold calls, a couple introductions, And, you know, it's been like 4 or 5 people that have been super instrumental. And I just want to share being here in San Jose in Silicon Valley. I mean, you know, I might not necessarily need a particular job from somebody at Google that's in the marketing department. But if you guys do, I'm happy to provide the introduction, you know, and I just want to encourage us all to share these resources with each other, build our own networks, and just, you know, pass the ball, because that's what I'm figuring out is the only way to really get ahead is to have really strong networks and networking skills. Awesome, Wes. Thanks so much for making time. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Oh, these are great resources.
Yeah, I put some resources in there. Tech Korea is a good one. I think the advice that I can give you when networking is like, don't feel you need to go to these events and be kind of the loudest person in the room. You know, I think, you know, that's the one thing that kind of terrifies me is that you go into these events and there's always a couple people that kind of stand out. And they're all super extroverted, and, you know, just be yourselves. You know, think about, you know, keep being curious. You know, keep being willing to, you know, to learn and to just to generally understand, you know, different areas that exist, you know, in the tech, at these tech companies, you know, they hire every position, right? You know, it takes a lot more than just engineers to keep these tech companies running. And just know that, like, you know, there's a ton of resources, there's a ton of people that have that experience that have kind of come from nothing, or, you know, have worked their way from a receptionist position into recruiting positions, stuff like that. So yeah, when you go to these, don't feel like you need to go out and be, you know, this big personality. Be yourselves. You know, if you want to just sit back and listen and reach out to someone a little bit more quietly, like, do that. I think that's a lot of what keeps people from going to these events, is feeling that they need to be, you know, one of these big personalities, a big voice in the room. You know, I encourage you to be yourselves and to continue to carry that throughout your careers. So.
I loved what you said about like going there to learn about industry insight information, you know, just going to keep a pulse on what's happening. It's really helpful too. Awesome, guys. 7 o'clock on the dot. Thanks so much for your time and attention and focus on this. And Wes, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a great, happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, happy holidays, everybody. Jennifer,
thanks, everyone.
Deacon will be very upset if I don't end this in a prayer.
Oh, sorry.
Is that okay? Is that
yeah,
fine?
Of course.
But, you know, if we just, like, we start all things in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. He had a little prayer here that he kind of gave me. You know, dear Lord, please give us our confidence to us when we have it in times of our worry or in times of fear. During those moments when we are burdened, please let us know that we are walking with you, and give us the strength to keep moving forward. And that these holidays, especially in this time of the Advent, that we are always, you know, knowing that you are there with us and with our families. With that, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Raul.
Activity grads, you know, Saint Ignatius of Loyola, pray for us. Our Lady of Grace, pray for us. Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Have wonderful holidays. Please look out for some of the emails we'll be sending. We're trying to get some stuff together. If you're around in the San Jose area, trying to get together for these holidays. We do have a posada. I shouldn't say a posada. We have Our Lady of La Virgen de Guadalupe play this Saturday from 9:30 to 10:30 over at Sacred Heart Parish. So please, you know, you're welcome to join us to come, you know, and celebrate with us. Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks, Raul. Bye, guys.
Bye. You want to stay on a little bit, Jennifer? You probably got to get going on, huh? Okay. Alejandro, gracias. Eric, how you doing, man?
Gracias. Thank you.
Good. Eric, good to see you. Albert.
Hey, you know, just holding up.
Miss Rose kind of lost the signal there. She wanted to say hello. She sends out her best out there. So thank you all. You know, how's everything going, Eric? Everything's going good?
For now, yeah, I'm just working some like evening shifts sometimes.
Good.
Also, I'll work like in the afternoon.
Good.
Let's go.
Well, take care of yourself, man, and keep in touch. And like I said, like, you know, we're here, man. We keep praying for each other, man, and keep moving forward. All right.
Totally. Yeah, I might swing by this weekend then.
Okay.
anything. Yeah.
Come by, man. Come by. All right.
All right. All
Okay.
right. See you later.
Okay. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye.